Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gift. In this video I'll be making this beautiful bustier top with yoke and a turtle neckline. So I'll be using freehand method to cut this fabric. So the first video is the inspiration, while the second video is what I made. I'll be working directly on my fabric. My fabric is already folded into two. So I'm going to be working on the front first before proceeding to the back. On the top of the fabric, I'm going to rule a straight line which is going to serve as the shoulder line or the starting line. From my shoulder line, I'll start taking my vertical measurement. So from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. So I'm going to mark the 10 inches down. From my shoulder to my under bust line is 13 inches. So I'm going to mark the 13 inches as well. And from my shoulder to my waistline is 16 inches. I'm going to mark it down. Then from my shoulder to my top length is 23 inches. I'm going to add 3 inches extra to it, making it 26 inches. So the length of this top I marked on my fabric is 26 inches. I'm going to roll out straight lines on the dot I marked, then I'm going to label them. So if you are working directly on your fabric, ensure you take your accurate measurements. Even though you are drafting a pattern too, ensure your measurements are correct before doing this. So the first line at the top of the fabric is my shoulder line, then the second line is my bust point line, then my under bust line, my waistline, and the top length. So from the center of my fabric on my shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from that 8 inches as my shoulder slope. Then I'm going to mark my round armhole measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. Then I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the armhole measurement I just marked. From the center of the fabric, also on the shoulder line, I'm going to be marking my neckline measurements. So for the width of the neckline, I'm going to be marking 3 inches. For the depth, I'm going to take 2.5 inches. So I'll advise you to take 3 inches if you don't want the turtleneck to be that tight. So I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect the depth to the width. Then I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the neckline area like this. Then I'm going to rule a straight line across the armhole line, which is going to serve as my chest line. So to get the midpoint of my armhole line, that is the armhole line divided into 2, I'm going to place my tape into 2 equal parts like this, and I'm going to mark the center, which is 4 inches. I'm going to go in by half an inch from that midpoint like this. Then on my chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4. After marking it, I'm going to connect the midpoint to the chest line, to the bust measurement on my chest line, and to the top of my armhole line like this. Now I'm going to be marking the dart on my bust point line. I'm going to divide my nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2, which is 4 inches. Because I'm working directly on my fabric, I'm going to add half an inch to it. So I marked 4.5 inches on my bust point line. So I'm going to take this ruler and extend that dot to my top length on a straight line. On my under bust line, on the part going towards the center of the fabric where my tape is currently is, I'm going to be marking half an inch there. I'm going to mark the half an inch on my waistline, and I'm going to mark the half an inch on the top length like this, and I'm going to connect all the dots together on a straight line. On the other side of the dart line, I'm going to go out by 1.5 inches. I'm going to mark the 1.5 inches on the top length, on the waistline, and on the under bust line, and I'm going to connect the 3 dots on a straight line. So if you are very busty, you should mark 2 inches on these parts. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from my bust line like this. So I'm going to mark the 1 inch on this dart line. Then I'm going to connect these 2 lines to it with my curve like this. So I'm going to divide the shoulder into two to mark the midpoint. So I'm going to fold my tape over like this into 2 equal parts. Then I'm going to mark the midpoint. Then I'm going to connect the midpoint to my dart line like this. So I placed my tape on my armhole line to know the length of my yoke. The length is 8 inches. If you don't want to expose your chest too much, maybe you can go up by 1 or 1.5 inch. So for the neckline at the center, I'm going to be marking a sweater to neckline, but I don't want it to be that deep like that of the inspiration. So I wanted to use my curve ruler at first, but I changed my mind to use my free hand. So the sweetheart neckline is going to start from my bust point, and I'm going to connect it to my armhole area like this. So make sure the center part is not too curvy, so you will not have difficulties while joining the yoke to your main fabric. So if you want your neckline to be deep, you can go below your bust point, and if you want it covered a bit, you can go above your bust point. Is based on your preference. I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of this line. So I'm going to go out by half an inch on the parts towards the armhole area, and I'm going to go out by half an inch on the parts towards the neckline area, and I'm going to use my curve to connect it to my bust point line like this. So I'm going to use my tape to cross check these 2 lines to make sure they are the same thing. So if yours are not the same thing, you go ahead and extend the shorter one. Now I'm going to be inserting my bottom measurements. On my chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4. Then I'm going to mark what I have for the dart, which is 1 inch. Then I'm going to add 2 inches seam allowance to it. So on my waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurements divided by 4. I'm going to mark the dart, what I have for the dart of the dart, which is 2 inches. I'm going to mark the 2 inches. Then I'm going to mark the 2 inches seam allowance I'll be adding to the waist. So on the top length, I'm going to take my hip measurements divided by 4. Then I'm going to mark the dart too. I'm going to check what I have for the dart. I had 2 inches, so I'm going to mark the 2 inches for the dart at the side. Then I'm going to add 2 inches seam allowance to it as well, and I'm going to connect all the dots together like this. On this side of my top length, I'm going to go up by 2.5 inches. Then I'm going to connect it to this point like this with my curved ruler. Then I'm going to cut out the excess part of the fabric. For the bustier, I'm going to be cutting out this part, so just watch closely to see the part I'll be cutting out. So I'm done detaching the yoke from the main fabric, and I'm going to use this chantling net to cut the yoke. So I'm going to fold it into two equal parts. Then I'm going to add half an inch to this part like this. Then I'm going to add half an inch also to the shoulder. Then I'm going to cut out the excess part of the fabric. So this is the yoke, and these are the other three parts of the front: the side front, the two side fronts, and the center front. Now I'll be proceeding to the back. My fabric is already folded into two. At the top of the fabric, I'm going to rule a straight line, which is going to serve as my starting line or my shoulder line. Then I'm going to mark my 2 inches zipper allowance to the base of the fabric. I'll start taking my vertical measurement from the shoulder line. From my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. From my shoulder to my waistline is 16 inches. And from my shoulder to the top length is 23 inches. But I added 3 inches seam allowance to it, just like I did for the front. So I marked 26 inches. So I'm going to rule straight lines across all the dots I made on the fabric. Then I'm going to label the lines: my bust point, my waistline, and the top length. So on my shoulder line, from the zipper allowance, I'll start taking all the measurement from the zipper allowance. I'm going to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2, which is 8 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from that line as my shoulder slope. Then I'm going to mark my round armhole measurements divided by 4, which is 8 inches, and I'm going to mark it down as well. Then I'm going to connect my shoulder slope to the armhole measurement I just marked on a straight line. Then I'm going to rule a straight line like this across the armhole measurements, and this line is going to serve as my chest line. For the depth of the neckline, I'll be taking 1.5 inch, and I'm going to be taking 3 inches as the width. Then I'm going to connect the two dots together like this. Then I'm going to extend it to my zipper allowance area. I will also connect the neckline to the shoulder slope. On my chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4. Then I'm going to divide my armhole line into 2 equal parts to get the midpoint. Then I'm going to connect that midpoint to the bust measurement I just marked on my chest line. For my zipper allowance line, I'm going to be marking my dart, which is my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. The dart is 4 inches. Because I'm working directly on my fabric, I marked 4.5 inches. So I marked it on my bust point, on my waistline, and on the top length, and I'm going to connect the 3 dots together on a straight line. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch from my bust point. Then on the top length, I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'm going to connect both of the lines to the 1 inch I just came down by from my bust point line. So this is the dart for the back. Now I'm going to be inserting my body measurement. On my chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4. Then I'm going to add 2 inches seam allowance to it. So on my waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4. Then I'm going to replace the dart of 1 inch. Then I'm going to add 2 inches zipper. I'm going to add 2 inches seam allowance to it. Then on the top length, I'm going to mark my hip measurements divided by 4. I'm going to add 1 inch I'm going to replace 1 inch for the dart, so I'm going to mark 1 inch at the side. Then I'm going to mark 2 inches as my seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect all the dots together like this. From my top length line, I'm going to go up by 2.5 inches, and I'm going to connect it to those points like this, just like we did for the front. I'll be marking the yoke on my chest line. So from the armhole line on the chest line, I'm going to go out by 3 inches like this. Then from the depth of my neckline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect the 1 inch to the 3 inches I just marked on my chest line with this curved ruler. This is the style of yoke I want for the back of my top, so you can take whatever style you want. So I'm going to cut out the excess part of the fabric like this. So I'm going to be cutting out the zipper allowance because I'll not be adding a zipper to this. And make sure the length of your yoke for the back is the same with the front. So I'll be taking out 3 inches from the top of these parts for the back. Then at the base, the top length, I'm going to mark 2 inches. Then I'm going to take this ruler and connect both of the dots together like this. So I'm going to cut this out. So I went ahead to use the fabric to cut my yoke. I added 1/2 inch to the base and to the side like this, and this is what I have for the yoke. So I have 2 pieces for the yoke. So this is my front fabric. I went ahead to iron ST to it to give the fabric more strength. So I'll be using this very soft wording to pad my fabric, so you can use whatever wording you want to. So I'm going to place the center front on it like this. So I'm going to pin it on it so it will not move. The wording is folded into 2, and I'm going to follow this shape and cut it. I'm going to take 1 inch from the neck area so it will not affect the neckline. For the other part as well, I'm going to fold the side front on it and cut it, and this is what I have. So I'm going to iron the wording to the main fabric like this. Then after ironing it, I'm going to join the sides together following the shape. I ironed ST to the main fabric for the back and to the lining of the back. So I'm going to place them on each other properly. So I went ahead to pipe the neckline of the yoke with my fabric like this, and this is what I have. So I'm going to place the yoke in between the lining piece and in between the fabric and the lining piece. I'll ensure I place it to the proper place, and I'm going to pin it to it like this before turning the fabric with my lining. I'm going to stitch the yoke to the fabric first before turning it to with the lining piece. So I'll make sure I secure it with my pin. Then I'm going to use the lining to turn it after securing it with my pin. So for the front, I went ahead to join the side front to the center front, and I opened the seam of the joining and ironed it open. After joining your side and center front together, ensure you iron the seam allowance open so it will give you a neat finishing. So I'm going to place the right side of the yoke on the right side of the fabric like this, and I'm going to pin them together like this. So I'm going to sew from this end to the other end. So ensure you pin it and to secure it well before you start sewing. So when I stitch the yoke to the fabric, this is what it's going to look like. I'm done stitching the yoke to the fabric, and this is what I have. Now I'm going to turn the yoke inside like this. Then I'm going to place my lining piece on it like this. So I'll make sure I place the lining on it properly so everything will be accurate. Then I'm going to pin it and follow the shape and sew it round. So I'm done turning it with my lining piece, and I went ahead and ironed it. So this is what I have. So this is what I have for both the front and the back after turning it with the lining piece. So I did not turn the line because I want to pipe it with another fabric. So if you want to close yours, ensure you leave a small opening at the side in order to turn the fabric over to the right side. So I went ahead to join the shoulders together by half an inch, and I made boning channels at the back of the fabric, and I added boning to it. Now I'm going to be cutting the band at the neck. So I'm going to place my tape up like this. So I'm going to place it around the neckline like this. So make sure your tape is standing so you get an accurate measurement. So I'm going to take it around like this. Whatever I have, it will be what I'm going to be using to cut the band. So I'm going to be cutting the band on this paper. I just drew a straight line on the paper. The measurement of the round neckline is 12 inches, so I divided into two, making it 6 inches. So on this paper I'm going to be marking 6.5 inches. I added half an inch seam allowance to that measurement. So I'm going to divide the 6.5 inches into two by folding my tape into two equal parts like this. So I'm going to mark the center, the midpoint. So after marking the center where I marked 6.5 inches, I'm going to go up by half an inch like this. So I'm going to connect the half an inch to the midpoint like this. From the straight line, I'm going to be taking the length of this band, which is 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to connect everything together like this and cut out the excess part of the paper. So I went ahead to use the paper to cut my fabric. I added half an inch on both sides, but I later cut them out because the band was too long. So this is what I have. So I'm going to notch the down part of the band like this. So this is the down part and this is the up part, so make sure you don't mix that up. When I open it up, this is what I have. I went ahead to cut two pieces, one piece as the lining and one piece as the main piece. So I'm going to be adding a loop to one side of the band like this. So I went ahead to make this rope and I'm going to place it in between the two fabrics, so the two right sides of the fabric are facing each other. So I'm going to place this on the main piece like this, then I'm going to pin it down. When I get to my sewing machine, I'm going to stitch it to the fabric before I use my lining piece to turn it. So I'm going to turn the top of the fabric, then the two sides, then I'm going to leave the down part open. So this is the band I'll be adding to the neckline. I'm done stitching it. I went ahead to iron it flat. So I'm going to place it on the neckline round like this and I'm going to stitch it to it. So before I do that, I'm going to be adding this to the center. From the inspiration, from the way the pattern of their fabric is, they added something similar to the center, but we are not using the same pattern of fabric, so I'm just going to be adding this band to mine. So this is 2.5 inches wide. I just went ahead to sew a band that will sew to the center like this. So I advise you that you should wear this on your body before placing this band to it, so it will stay well and it will be at the center of the neckline. So I'm going to pin it to it like this and I'm going to sew both sides of the band to the fabric like this. So after stitching this to the center, I went ahead to add the band to the neckline. So after that, I cut out a basic sleeves and I added it to it. So I'm going to close up the sides. I'm going to arrange them on each other properly and I'm going to close it with my body measurements. Remember, I did not close the base of the top with my lining, so I'm going to cut another long fabric and I'm going to use to pipe it, then I'm going to add eyelets to the back.